Intuition. As an adult, I feel like intuition is something we lose. We stop trusting our gut. We stop trusting our intuition the older we get. And oftentimes it's because we always feel like we're making the right choices and we end up hurt, betrayed. And then we feel like maybe those were the wrong decisions. We stop trusting our gut when it leads us down the wrong paths, or maybe those paths were never the wrong path. But anyway, we learn to stop trusting our intuition. And I heard a name the other day, and it's a name I think about every now and then. The name of this person was a man from my childhood, and his name came up completely random in conversation with somebody who didn't even know that I knew who this person was because he was best friends with my mom and my dad growing up. The story is scary, but looking back, the adults in my life, I don't think they made it as big of a deal as it was. But when I think of that man, I think of intuition and trusting your intuition. My parents regularly had friends over. We lived in the country, kind of where we live now, and they always had friends over. They'd have bonfires, they'd play music. My dad always had 93 Rock, The Bear, or the UP Rocks. And they'd listen to that, and I would be out there because I was the oldest child. I always wanted to be the cool kid, so I'd be out there with my dad and his buddies and my mom and whoever else was over. I had a little bit of a rough upbringing. Every summer, for as long as I can remember, when we lived out in Powers, I would set up a tent during the summertime. It was the one thing I looked forward to. And every year, I would save up enough money from babysitting and all the little side hustles I used to do back then. And I'd buy myself a tent, I'd buy myself a lantern, and a sleeping bag. I would take all of the stuff out of my bedroom, my stuffed animals, my books, my blankets, my pillows, my beanie babies, and I would make myself basically a bedroom of a tent. And I'd put it somewhere in the yard or in the field. And I would sleep there most nights. It was my little escape because I needed an escape. It was peaceful. It was me and the frogs, the noises of the night, and the night sky and the stars. Just, that was my safe place, my tent. Until that one guy and that one name. So one night, he's over with my dad. They're having drinks. I'm maybe 11, 12 years old. And I decide to call it a night. So I say, I'm going to bed. I'm going to my tent. My tent is a little far out from the bonfire. So it's in the dark. You can't see over there. There's no lights. It's in a field. I walk to my tent. I lay down. This is something I did every night. I was comfortable doing that as a kid. But this night, my gut said something's wrong. I was scared. I never got scared. This time I was scared. I don't know what it was, but there was that little voice inside your head. It was telling me to go inside. And I tried to ignore it, and I laid there, but I couldn't sleep because for whatever reason I felt petrified. To avoid embarrassment, I snuck inside the house. I stayed far enough away from the bonfire's light, and I stayed in the tree line, and I walked around the backyard so that nobody would see that I snuck inside. I didn't want them to know that I chickened out of something I do all the time. And at that time, my bedroom was pretty much bare because all my stuff was in my tent. And there was always a blanket on the back of the couch, draped over the couch. And there was always a pillow, a decorative pillow on the couch. So I opted to sleep on the couch with that blanket and pillow. Not in my bedroom, not in the tent. The next morning I wake up. I go to my tent. It's still zipped up in the front. But in the back of the tent, it was slashed open. There was probably at least 3 slashes down the rear, and it was ripped open, wide open. My blankets and my pillow were out of the tent. I had this Bugs Bunny pillow, and Bugs Bunny looked like someone had stabbed him multiple times, and his ear was ripped off. I thought maybe it was wildlife. Freaked me out because I was supposed to be in that tent. Anyway, that man that was with my dad at the fire, my parents' friend, who had been over many times, he told my dad, hey, I think that I did that. He thinks he's the one who violently attacked my tent with a knife. And he did. He always had knives because he was a big fisherman. That's what I remember most. He was always gutting fish, and he always had the fillet knives. What if I was in that tent that night? I was in that tent that night. What if I didn't trust my gut? What if I didn't follow my intuition? What if I didn't listen to that little voice that said, get out? What if I did not follow my feelings? I fully believe I would not be here today. I would have been some story that was on the cover of the newspaper for 7 days, and then nobody would have thought about me again. I wouldn't be here today if I was in that tent. I never saw that man again after that. I did not see that man until maybe 18 years later. I saw him randomly in Menards in a trench coat and long swamp boots with his hair slicked back. It looked like he was part of a group home because he was indeed little insane enough to have to live in a home. And then a few years later, I saw that he died. And that man's name has always stuck with me as why you should follow your gut, trust your intuition. And it's been really difficult as an adult to do that. And recently I've been fighting to reclaim the trust of my intuition. And that name got brought up out of the blue from someone who does not know that story or that I know that person. And the story they had to tell was also a crazy story about what they had to work with that man. That's a little lesson to trust your intuition as if you're a child again and you haven't been tainted by the world. It could save your life. You don't know.